Hey everyone, and welcome to The Price Check, the show where we try to make sense of the money stuff that affects all of us. I'm your host, and today we're talking about a big mystery. It's a puzzle that's been on a lot of our minds. Why are prices still so high in Bangladesh, even when they're falling all over the world? You've probably noticed it yourself at the market. You go to buy rice, cooking oil, or gas, and the price just doesn't seem to go down. But if you look at the news, you hear that global prices for these things have dropped a lot. In fact, for many items, prices are now lower than they were before the war in Ukraine started back in 2022. Let's look at our neighbors. In places like Sri Lanka, which had a huge economic crisis a couple of years ago, prices are actually falling now. In Pakistan, inflation was once over 35%, but it's now dropped to just 4%. In India and Nepal, prices are very low and stable. But in Bangladesh, the situation is different. Our inflation is still high, over 8.5%. So what's going on? Let's take a look at some examples. The tale of two prices. First, let's talk about rice. We've seen a report from the Bangladesh Trade and Tariff Commission that shows how much prices have fallen globally. For example, a type of rice from Thailand is now 38% cheaper than it was a year ago. And Bangladesh has imported a lot of rice this year, so you'd expect local prices to fall, right? But they haven't. The price of coarse rice in Dhaka is actually higher now than it was a few months ago. Why is that? Experts say that there might not be enough competition in the market, or that the government's efforts to control prices just aren't working well. Next, let's look at cooking oil. Globally, the price of crude soybean oil has dropped by 44% since its peak in 2022. In Bangladesh, the price has only dropped by about 17%. So we are seeing some price cuts, but not nearly as much as the rest of the world. What about the government? We've heard from the government about this. The Commerce Secretary says that he thinks domestic prices are in line with global ones. He mentioned that edible oil prices were recently cut. But economists and experts have a different view. They say that even with a weaker currency, prices could still be lower. They point to a few reasons. One big reason is the price of the US dollar. The dollar used to be around 86 taka, but now it's around 122 taka. This makes imports more expensive, but even when you account for that, experts say there's still a big gap. Another issue is gas and fuel. When the war in Ukraine started, fuel prices went way up. The government raised fuel prices here to record levels. Now, global crude oil prices have fallen a lot, but our fuel prices haven't gone down by much. The government has said that they're making money from fuel sales and that they're worried about smuggling. They say that if they lower prices too much, people will smuggle fuel into neighboring countries where it's more expensive. But economists argue that the government is just protecting their own profits and not thinking about the consumers. For example, a group called the Center for Policy Dialogue, or CPD, looked at the numbers and said that diesel prices could easily be cut by 10 to 15 taka a liter. So what does this all mean for us, the people who buy these things every day? It means that even though the world market is giving us a reason to hope for lower prices, that hope isn't translating into real savings for us. We're still paying much more for things like sugar and eggs than people in neighboring countries like India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Ultimately, the problem seems to be a mix of things: a weaker currency and a lack of strong competition and monitoring in our markets. While the new interim government has made progress on some fronts, like stabilizing the currency, the high cost of living is still a huge burden for low-income people. So the next time you're at the market wondering why things are so expensive, you'll know that it's not just your imagination. The prices really are higher here than they should be, and there's a lot more work to be done to fix the problem.